Hola a todos. Hello everyone. How are you? Today we will talk about the secret ways of Thomas Aquinas. Because you always hear about the 5 ways, but in actuality there are more. There are 6. It's more, 7. But in actuality, well, they are not really ways, but they are different formulations of the fourth one, but it would be said that they are a sixth and a seventh one. So let us go. The best video on this seventh way, this sixth way, it was made by Modality. It's a Spanish speaking video. Sadly, if you do not know Spanish, you probably do not understand. But it's about 40 minutes long, and he explains this way and he refutes the objections. He also has another video of refuting objections of the same way. So Modality video is an amazing one, but sadly there is not a single version of this in English. So that's very tragic. But you can find this way in the book of Aquinas, Being an Essence, or the Ente et Essentia. Now, it will go something like this. Premise 1. We know that there are contingent entities who have existence and essence. I don't think that should be very, let's say, hard to accept. I would I would think that most would agree with that, because if essences did not exist, meaning a nature for things, there will be no distinction between entities, but there are, of course. We find that the human being is rational, is sensitive, is alive, and we find that the rock is none of those things. It's not alive, it's not rational, it's not sensitive, neither of those things. So there is something in the man that makes him be a man. That is what we call humanity. And there is something in the rock that makes it be a rock. The same thing for a dog. There is dogness, let's say. Now, if there were not essences, that would make that X, for example, doesn't have an identity. There is nothing that makes X to be X. But that's absurd, because it clearly has an identity. So, premise 2 will be there is a distinction between being, the existence of the thing, and the way of being, which is the nature of it, the way of being. So, both you and me have humanity, correct? Our essence is the same. We have the same nature, that is humanity. However, our existence is different. Why? Because you are beautiful and I'm ugly. You are tall and I am tiny. You are fit and I am a fat and I'm disgusting. So we have a different way of being, of existing, because of our material composition, because of matter and form and the accidents. So that makes the existence of a thing different to its nature. Now, all of those beings have an efficient cause to their existing, meaning they have been participated by someone else. Think of a carpenter and a table. The table has the carpenter as its efficient cause. It exists only because the carpenter used a tree to make the table. That is the efficient cause. That is the reason of the table. Okay? Now, their existence does not come from nothing or as an abrupt fact. They need to find their existence, their explanation to be in a place. Now, can they just exist without a reason? That would be a brute fact. And that is illogical. Why? Because it violates the principle of sufficient reason. That says that everything that exists has a reason to be, either in someone else or in itself. So when we see a house burning, we don't think, well, it's burning because nothing. It is burning. None of us think think those things. We always assume that things have reasons or causes, either in themselves or in someone else. Okay? Because otherwise, if brute facts were right, were true, then in that case science would be impossible. And that is clearly stupid. And if you are an atheist, you will not be going against science, I guess. But whatever. They could also be that their existence comes from nothing. But that too is stupid. It doesn't make sense. Because from nothing, nothing comes. And nothing can be said of nothing. Because if you can say something about nothing, then there is something. And if something comes from nothing, then nothing is not nothing, but something. So it cannot be from nothing, and it cannot be a brute fact. So they cannot be deficient causes of themselves. Can the table make the table itself? That is an absurd. They cannot give their existence to themselves because before having existence they did not exist. So you have a contradiction. If they are the cause of their own existence, it's a contradiction and that doesn't make sense. It's an absurd. So they receive their being or existence from someone else. And that would be true. They participate in someone else. However, an infinite regress of finite beings giving existence to each other is impossible. Of course, that is absurd. Why an infinite regress is impossible? Because those are hierarchical series, in which every member depends on the one before it. Think, for example, in this plushie. This plushie only exists by the molecules, but the molecules only exist by the atoms. If you take away the molecules, you do not have the plushie anymore, and if you take the atoms, you do not have the plushie anymore, right? Each member depends on the one before it as a chain, and that is why an infinite regress is impossible. And that will mean that this being is pure act of being and is the source of existence to other entities. There will be a being that is existence itself and is the ground for everything that there is, meaning that is pure act of being. And if he is pure act of being, that would mean that he is eternal, he's pure act, he's our perfect, he's the first cause, and everything that all of those titles is to what we call God. So you have all the divine attributes to the source of existence to things, to essences. So in that case, we can easily say that God exists. Now, the seventh way or from evil. You all have heard the argument of evil. Because the certain philosopher said if God exists, where does evil come from? However, it should be argued the other way around. If evil exists, God exists. For evil would only exist if the order of good disappeared, the deprivation of which is evil, and such an order would not exist if God did not exist. And you can find it in Summa Contra Gentiles. Now, what is Aquinas trying to say here? Is that evil by itself is not a substance, it's not something that exists in the world as a table does. No. We only say that something is evil when it's a privation of a good. For example, we only say that we have a hunger when you need nutrients, when your body is not filled with food. There is something lacking in you, and that is why you have hunger. We say that you are ignorant when you do not have knowledge. Ignorance only exists when there is not knowledge. So, in that case, we could say that evil is like darkness. Darkness is not a thing, it's only the lack of light. And evil works the same way as we just saw. So, if goodness exists and evil is only the lack of goodness, that would imply that there is a source or a maximum. And then you will have a summa bonum, or a being that is the supreme good. And a first cause, and that is what we call God. And that would be the second way. So, Well, it can also be applied to the fourth way, mainly, because the fourth way says that in the world we find things that are transcendental or pure perfections. Those are things that all beings, by all existence, they all have it. Things like being, they exist, of course. They have goodness that is desirable, but some have it more or less, more fulfilled than others. For example, the way of being of the rod is more perfect. No, sorry. The way of being of the dog is more perfect as the way of being of the rod. Why? Because the dog is sensitive. The dog is alive, and the rod is neither of those things. It's better to be a dog than to be a rod. And it's better to be Joe Biden, because Joe Biden is rational. Nah, just kidding, he's not. Bad joke. The human being is rational, he's sensitive, and he has all of those attributes. So he's clearly better, more fulfilled, has more goodness, let's say, than the dog and the rat. But all of those things, like goodness, truth, being, they need a source or a being that has it in his maximum, and that would be God. And of course, as Aristotle says, goodness is what all desire. Now, it is a clear, well, this is a Aquinas quote in Aristotle, sorry. Now, it is clear that a thing is desirable only so far as it is perfect. For all desire their own perfection, but everything is perfect so far as it is actual. Therefore, it is clear that a thing is perfect so far as it exists, for it is existence that makes all things actual. As is clear from the foregoing, hence it is clear that goodness and being are the same really, but goodness presents the aspect of desirableness, which being does not present. And therefore Aquinas says that every being as being is good, for all beings as being has actuality and in some way perfect, since every act implies some sort of perfection, and perfection implies desirability and goodness, as it is clear from the Article 1, hence it follows that every being is good. And because every being is good, then all goodness is attributed to God as the first cause. Therefore, he is called the supreme good, and because he is all good, and his creation is good too, participate in his goodness and his being, therefore he loves all of his creation, because he cannot will evil. So there you have it. So that would be the sixth and the seventh way of Aquinas, which are very similar to the second and the fourth way. So have a good day, everyone.